right, let's jump into another deep dive. This time we're taking a closer look at a huge La Liga matchup, Sevilla taking on Barcelona.
Definitely a big one.
And we've got some great analysis from Merton Can. They really know their stuff when it comes to La Liga.
Hmm.
Um, and this game was important for both sides. Barcelona, they really needed a win to stay in the title race.
Hmm.
While Sevilla, they haven't had the best start to the season, but they always seem to bring their best against the bigger teams. Yeah.
For sure. And you could really see that right from the start, especially with how Sevilla set up defensively, that 4-4-2 they came out with.
Right.
It was clearly designed to shut down Barcelona's midfield,
Yeah.
those creative players they've got. And they were pressing high, trying to force turnovers and then looking to hit quickly on the counter, especially out wide.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. I mean, how are they actually trying to pull that off against a team like Barcelona, a team that's famous for their possession-based style?
Well, it all came down to discipline
Yeah.
and timing. I mean, it was almost like they were trying to lure Barcelona into this trap, let them have the ball in areas where they weren't as dangerous, and then try and clog up those passing lanes in the middle of the pitch. And then when Barcelona inevitably lost the ball or tried a risky pass, boom, Sevilla would spring into action looking for those quick counterattacks, especially down the flanks.
Yeah.
And for a good chunk of the first half, it was actually working. Like, they managed to disrupt Barcelona's rhythm, and they even created a couple of nervy moments for their defense.
Oh yeah, Bono, Sevilla's keeper, he made some absolutely incredible saves early on. I mean, Lewandowski almost scored early in that first half,
Right.
but Bono was just like a brick wall.
He was amazing, wasn't he? But the big question is, was this defensive strategy really sustainable for Sevilla? Could they keep up that level of intensity for the entire match? It was a bit of a gamble, wasn't it? I mean, leaving that much space for someone like Raul Felix. He was pulling all the strings in attack for Barcelona, constantly finding these pockets of space between the lines.
Yeah, it's always risky to give a player like that too much room to operate.
Exactly. And eventually Barcelona started to adjust. In the second half, Xavi made some pretty crucial substitutions, especially bringing on Gavi in midfield.
Right. That seemed to be a real turning point in the match.
It was.
So what was the thinking there? I mean, Gavi's obviously a talented player, but why bring him on at that specific moment?
Yeah, well, Mert had a really interesting take on this. He said that Gavi coming on really shifted the entire, the energy of Barcelona's midfield. He brought this injection of energy and urgency, started winning those second balls, and just really disrupted Sevilla's defensive structure.
Yeah.
And he agreed. He said it forced Sevilla to start making mistakes they hadn't been making earlier in the match.
Interesting. And then, of course, we had that decisive moment. Barcelona's goal.
Mm-hmm.
Dembele with a beautiful cross, and, well, Lewandowski just did what Lewandowski does best, finding the back of the net.
It was such a classic Barcelona goal, just a perfect example of how their patience and their tactical adjustments just paid off. They managed to stretch Sevilla's defense, creating all that space for Dembele to put in that cross. And then Lewandowski's positioning, I mean, it was clinical.
It really did just highlight the difference between the two sides on the night.
Yeah.
Barcelona, even when they weren't playing their best, they still found a way to break through. And Sevilla, they had their moments, but they couldn't seem to convert those moments into clear-cut chances.
Yeah, and that's been a kind of a recurring issue for Sevilla this season. I mean, they can hold their own against any team in the league, but they're just missing that cutting edge in the final third. And in this loss, I mean, it might make their push for a European spot even more difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough road ahead. So any final thoughts on the match? Big win for Barcelona, obviously keeps them in the title race. But what about Sevilla? What do they need to change to turn those solid performances into consistent results?
Well, that's the big question for Sevilla, isn't it? The defense is there, but what can they figure out a way to be more creative, more clinical in attack? Can they find a way to consistently unlock those tight defenses? And I think that's something to keep an eye on as we watch the rest of their season unfold.
Absolutely. Lots to think about. Thanks for breaking it all down.
No problem. Always a pleasure.
And for everyone listening, thanks for joining us on another deep dive.